Cool. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's APAC community call. So we do have a pre-packed agenda for you today. So first we will yes, thank you. We'll go through some Odyssey news, and then we will actually have a new section for today that we're gonna. So basically, from now and going forward, we're gonna have a new Odyssey studies that we will share with everyone, so we know like what are the studies that from different parts of the world and that are kind of calling for participation as for either data partner or just kind of more of join a study to help with either the literature review or anything else, like even if you don't have data to contribute for certain study. So we'll be having those going forward. And then for the majority of today's call, we will be playing the recordings from previous global community calls on the working group updates. And today we'll have the natural language processing, the NLP working group by Professor Hua. And then also we'll have phenotype development and evaluation. Last but not least, we'll have the FHIR OMOP discussion that we did have, Christian back then to talk to us about as well. So working group update. So first for the Odyssey news, I want to quickly share one Odyssey post in the forum. Not sure if you have seen it already. It is for the data partner survey that you can see here. So basically every year, if you remember, I'm gonna bring the book up. So every year, if you may remember, you have, this is the last year's book. So you will have, of course, there's, everything like we've been doing as a community, but in sorry, I don't remember which page, but in one of the pages, it will list out all of the Odyssey data partners. And now basically, and then we refresh all of the data partner information every single year. And now it's a time to have your data and also your affiliations information in, so that we will have the newest list for this year's book. Basically, this is from last year, but this year, Odyssey Global is also kind of doing a survey on kind of what are the new or existing data partners that we have globally. So feel free to disseminate this link to your whoever have the data already converted into OMOP CDM. Now it's the time to let the community know, and it will be kind of included in the Odyssey book, the Odyssey Symposium book this year, and also I'll be calling out kind of during the global symposium in mid-October. So short story, please fill this in, and so your data information will be included in this year's book and also the global symposium. I think that, the deadline is September the 2nd, which is next Friday. So please do that soon. And next we'll have kind of our Odyssey studies section. So this time we want to kind of feature a new study that is proposed from University of Oslo, Norway, and also I think which is also a relatively new data partner or data hub that we have in Odyssey Europe community. And also the study is about the medication use in pregnant women, and then we'll do it with and without COVID. So generally a pregnancy-related drug study. And then as you can see here, so we do have the link to a synopsis of the study, very high level, as this is a new as this study is in a relatively kind of earlier stage. So definitely still have the time to participate, and then please let the 3 study owners know by either by emailing them of your interest in participating the call, and then feel free to reach out to them by September the 15th. So everyone, so this is the time to join more new Odyssey studies. All right, cool. So that's the Odyssey news and also the new Odyssey study. So next we will be sharing with everyone the 3 different working group update. And then we will start with NLP by Professor Hua Xu from University of Texas, Austin.
Hello, everyone. So I'm going to give some update about the NLP working group for the year of 2022. Next. Just a brief introduction of the NLP working group. I think we are probably one of the longest working group. We started 2016, so it's been 6 years. And our goal is mainly actually to promote promote the use of texture data in EHRs to support observational study at Odyssey. And currently we are doing methodology and the tool development to really help represent the texture data as well as tools to actually help process those texture data using NLP. And we are also conducting cross-institutional study, especially focused on those studies by using the texture data in EHR. And another goal is really trying to disseminate the best practice of using texture data for real-world evidence generation. Next slide. This is just some kind of meeting information if anyone is interested in joining us. So we have a monthly meeting, which is on the second Wednesday every month, 2 to 3 p.m. East time. And we have a wiki page on odyssey.org, and as well as a Git repository, which we save all the NLP tools over there. And if you have any questions, you want to join the group in the Teams, just show me an email and I'll add you. Next slide. So now I kind of focus on the OKRs for the 2022. We have actually 4 objectives. The number one is really about to revise the representation of texture data in the CDM, mainly the no NLP table. Based on the feedback, we're trying to do some revisions, and also we're trying to develop user guides to actually help better use those CDMs for the texture data. And the second one is really to develop multiple NLP tools to help with the extraction ETL process for the texture data to the no NLP table. And third one is we want to conduct at least 2 multi-site clinical studies utilize texture data. And number 4 is basically continuously disseminate and engage the community. Next. I briefly report the progress so far for each of those objectives. In the first one, which is more about representation of the no NLP table, we actually, I think one of the major accomplishments is we actually submit a paper on representing and utilizing texture data for the observational study, basically describing the no NLP table and how other people are using this no NLP table to do different kind of application. And that paper was starting early this year and submit to the Journal of Biomedical Informatics. I think it's 1 to 2 months ago. I need to keep tracking, maybe ask for the status. And we also submitted a proposal to the CDM working group actually to ask for some modifications to the no NLP table based on the feedback from the community. And what we're going to do next is also talk about some more kind of intermediate table to store like modified node types and the other additional NLP features, because we do see there's a kind of trade-off for how we use the no NLP table versus how many other NLP artifacts will also want to be stored somewhere. So we're thinking about maybe some kind of intermediate table will be a good option for this kind of feature from NLP processing. Next. So the second objective is really about developing NLP tools for the ETL process to load from the raw texture data all the way to the no NLP table, as well as from no NLP table later maybe to the clinical tables. So we're talking about actually we want to at least integrate like extend 4 existing NLP tool. So we'll make those tools make the no NLP format as one of the output of those tools. So the tools could be, we already identified 4 people actually going to, they own the tool and they're going to do the extension. So Hongfang has this MedTagger, Ting has will work on the CTEX, I work on the clamp. I forgot the name of the POS tool. Basically some popular tools, we will make them, will output the Odyssey no NLP format in the JSON or some kind of format, make it easier to export to the no NLP table. And then we're also writing scripts, actually transfer the data from no NLP table to the clinical table. I think we actually published this on the GitHub. And also there's a big effort actually really trying to normalize this node type, which is led by Kartik at the Columbia. We're actually now also talking to the PicoNet team, the GPC network led by Russ Waitman. They're also trying to normalize the node type. So we're trying to figure out a way how, say from EPIC, from Cerner, how those different metadata associated with the node type can be used to standardize the node type using the low-rank ontology. So this is the kind of thing we have quite active discussion over here. Hopefully this will be helpful for people to find the relevant nodes for their studies. And also Juan is working on a new version of an Acne, which is converting the UMLS to the Odyssey concept ID in the CDM. Next. Object 3 is more about conducting studies. I have to admit we are kind of slow in doing this coordinating multi-site study and want to learn from more others. And if anyone wants to help, please talk to us. And we are doing one post-COVID study with 4 sites. And it's kind of slow for this project, but we're also looking for another project. I think Hong Fang and Michael, they both have another idea, but it's not finalized yet. So we are looking for more projects. If you are interested in using texture data to do some kind of study, we will be happy to work with you to do this. And last slide, I think it's about objective 4. Like I said, we have a monthly meeting. We have invited presentations, project-specific meeting like the node type. Now we actually have ad hoc meetings actually going on. And also feel free to send questions at the forum. And we're looking for more participation from the audience. Thanks, everyone. Let me know if you have any questions.
Sorry, I was muted. And then as you can see here, I think Hua has shared the link as well, but I will be sending everyone kind of just I think all of the working group leaders are referring to how you can sign up. There is actually a Google form for it, and I will send that in our chat so you can kind of sign up there as well. And next we will have the Phenotype Library update from Gotham.
So I'm going to use this time to talk about the Odyssey Phenotype Library, the 2022 refresh. So as you all know, the Phenotype Library has been a long-standing effort of the Odyssey community. And as of 2022, there is a responsible work group. This work group, an Odyssey work group called the Phenotype Development Evaluation Work Group, has made this their OKR to release an initial operational framework on how individual contributors may collaborate and use the Odyssey Phenotype Library resource by July 2022. So in this, I'm going to talk about this initial framework. This framework was discussed in the forums and also by the work group, and the work group has approved this for consideration. As part of this effort, the following resources were made available to the community. One is an Atlas instance. This is at atlas-phenotype.odyssey.org. Everybody inside Odyssey can go to the forums and register for read-only access to this Atlas instance. This is a security-enabled Atlas that will have good quality cohort definitions that has gone through some of our best practices. There is a repository, GitHub repository that is conformant with Hades. Martin is going to talk about Hades software. So if a cohort definition is published inside this GitHub repository, an R package called Phenotype Library, it is now usable by other Hades packages. There is a network study called Phenotype Library Diagnostics. Data partners will be requested to partner and execute this study on their data and the results and contribute the results back to the community. Those results will be made available in a results viewer. The URL will be data.odyssey.org/phenotype library. It is currently not live. It is expected to go live in August 2022. The rest of the resources are currently live. So I want to talk about the responsible work group. As you know, the Phenotype Development Evaluation Work Group has been around for some time with the stated mission. That work group meets every second and the fourth Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in the US. Please come and join us in this work group. The responsibilities of this work group are, for this particular OKR, has been defined as to define the minimum standards for phenotypes in the Phenotype Library, to manage a community submission process, to perform scientific peer review in a public forum, publish and maintain the Odyssey Phenotype Library repository of cohort definitions, execute Odyssey Phenotype Library network study and publish the results, develop the material for peer-reviewed scientific publications on these phenotypes. So what does it mean by community submissions? The work group deliberated and has come up with these rules. Submission is complete if it has a clinical description. We spent a considerable amount of time in Phenotype February to define what clinical description is. It should have the required sections, and those sections should be posted on forums.odyssey.org. It should have the segments overview, presentation, assessment plan, prognosis, disqualifiers, strengtheners, logic description. And we will detail that more in a different conversation. There's a segment called literature review. As part of our Odyssey best practices, we require that a literature review is performed to see if a phenotype algorithm has already been evaluated by another organization, and to see what we can learn from those. There's a segment called logic description. The logic description is a translation of the human understandable clinical description into a structured form that could then be translated into a rule-based phenotype, such as that in the Atlas tool. We request the submission of cohort definitions, one or two of the best cohort definitions that have gone through the phenotype development evaluation iteration process, the best practices. We require the publishing of a cohort diagnostic output on one or more data sources, and those outputs should be publicly available, such as data.odyssey.org. We also recommend the use of eValuator and other evaluation or validation metrics wherever possible. We then require the discussion of the submitter's evaluation or validation findings on the forums. This should have insights on sensitivity, specificity, and index date misclassification errors. We also have defined a technical object called an cohort definition set object that allows the cohort definitions to be contributed to the Phenotype Library. Now that there is a submission, and once these requirements are met, a submission goes through the following process. The work group will set up a peer review process. The first step is to import those definitions into Atlas phenotype.odyssey.org. When those cohort definitions are imported, it gets assigned a cohort ID. Those cohort ID becomes permanent. It's immutable. It does not change. And so it's got the similar idea of an OMOP concept ID. A volunteer peer reviewer from the community will be asked to review the submission. That will also be done publicly. We'll create a rubric for the reviewer, which includes things like, is the clinical description clear? Does it have the essential components? Does the logic description align with the clinical description? Does the cohort definition match the logic description? Is the evaluation that is reported by the submitter observable in the cohort diagnostic output? Is the evaluation valid in terms of the sensitivity errors, specificity errors, and index date misclassification? Are there other validation estimates like the eValuator output? And their personal recommendations. Do they recommend it to be accepted? Can it be used in a study, or has it been used in a study? Once the peer has reviewed it and recommended for acceptance, the work group is now responsible for acceptance and promotion. This is the managerial task of taking the cohort definition and making it available in the GitHub repository. That GitHub repository Hades package will be version controlled, so it's now referenceable. The IDs are guaranteed to stay the same and are immutable, so they can be referenced in an Odyssey study or in another Odyssey package. And it can also be referenced in an external publication. And the work group will continue its scientific work. It will continue to use this experience to promote Odyssey best practices, to publish Odyssey best practices, to make these core definitions referenceable, and also to create a referenceable article that can be used in other Odyssey studies regarding phenotype development and evaluation. Next, I think Beebs, you wanted to talk about the upcoming work group.
Yes. Yes, thank you. So this announcement follows pretty directly from what Gautam was speaking about, the phenotype development and evaluation work group. So during the US Symposium on Sunday, October 16th from 1 to 5 p.m. is the activity associated with this work group. And this is the proposal for what we're going to do. The main goal is that we're going to extend the terrific work that was done by some members of the community during Phenotype February. And the idea is that we would like to formalize the process by which computable phenotypes are developed, evaluated, and importantly, validated. And the background here is really that the established status quo gold standard validation studies that are currently being done are of incredibly immense value, but really have limitations given the current observational research context that we're in of large, disparate, distributed database networks covering very heterogeneous populations across the world. This current validation approach generally assesses one phenotype in one data source or one study population at a time, which gives us nice results with high internal validity, but they're of questionable external validity. This involves manual chart review by a clinical expert, which really limits the number of case adjudications that can be possible during a single validation study. So we end up with these nice high quality results, but it's really, really time and resource intensive. They generally assess cases only, which gives us positive predictive values, but it's often at it lacks negative predictive value or sensitivity. The validation metrics that we get from these approaches are often applied to external and possibly non-applicable study populations. And this is problematic given that we know measurement error correction is highly sensitive to measurement error accuracy and applicability. It's really not well understood how these measurement errors transport across populations. So this presents us with a really massive opportunity, in my opinion, and I hope some of you will agree with this. The Odyssey community has the people, the data, and the tools to really advance validation to solve some of these problems. And we'd like to invite interested participants and data holders to participate in this workshop where we'll introduce a two-part Odyssey validation approach, which is a combination of comprehensive clinical characterization, which some of you might recognize as the tool cohort diagnostics, and then secondly, the probabilistic reference standard validation approach, which many of you will know as pHEValuator. So we'd like to invite people to participate in the development of a method for rapid phenotype development, evaluation, and validation that really scales across a data network. And we're going to ask participants in advance to run a small study package that will validate an established phenotype in their own data. And we invite you to come and report the results and interpret and review with us all during this workshop. And we hope that you will join us. And I'm going to add some of this background information and some ways to get involved on the forums in the next little while. But I hope that this has whet your appetite a little bit. And if you've got any questions about the goals, background, or opportunities here, feel free to contact me.
All right, thank you. So that was the Phenotype February from Gautam. So I think phenotype that we did, as you remember, everything was kind of based upon the Shiny page that was really for cohort diagnostic tool, and hence kind of everything goes hand in hand. And the last working group update we have for everyone today is from OMOP, a FHIR OMOP collaboration by Christian.
Real quick, what's happening? Just get you remind you, we had last year the big press release between HL7 Odyssey that we want to harmonize our common data models. Actually, I'm saying it again, we want to harmonize the common data models, not just map, harmonize. So that's a big goal, and but what we decided to do is first map and see how these work together and what the difference is and what works in one and what doesn't work in the other, that kind of thing. And we have a bunch of subgroups that we created, two with a specific use case, digital quality and oncology, and two with model harmonization and terminology harmonization. And interesting, and then we had the idea that the way this is going to go is, this is not, this is an obsolete timetable here, but we're going to kick it off, and when we have a meeting, bring it, and then we have subgroups, they're going to start meeting. And then what HL7 does are these connectathons, where they're essentially it's like similar to our studyathons, except it's data, to make data available in the various forms and syntax and versions, and then what they have are these implementation guidelines. And then, you know, kind of like middle of this year, we'd be done. And it isn't that simple. We do have a catalog. Lots of people have tried this and have started. And of course, they start with a very specific use case or application in mind. So it was the first, it was good news, but it was also disconcerting, saying, oh, lots of people have done something, and we kind of like have to bring it all together. Learning number one. Learning number two is it's bidirectional. Okay, you can't just assume that if you convert OMOP into FHIR, then you can also convert FHIR into OMOP. These are very different beasts. And the reason is because the different standards have different requirements on what is implicit and what is explicit in their definition of data. Very different. And so we said, all right, we're going to do both. We're going to do two jobs. So suddenly the task doubled. We have an OMOP to FHIR job and a FHIR to OMOP job. Okay, so it was the second one, and then we started diving in. And then, for example, just to give you, just without going into any detail, something as simple as visit occurrence conversion to FHIR. There's a FHIR encounter in FHIR, but then you have to actually pick which one. Is it the FHIR generic or the US core or any of the others? The versions of this. And they define things differently, okay? So, for example, the binding here has class 1, which means there's just one possibility is one too many. So you have different definitions depending which of the different implementation guidelines you use or standards in FHIR. And, you know, in our world, it's mostly this. There are a few more of these, but it's mostly this. So we said, all right, let's see. And turns out they're quite different. They are differently defined. They're defined in different places. So you actually have to choose. So there's no such thing as FHIR. There are lots of FHIRs. From an OMOP perspective, that was surprising, because in OMOP we are trying to have one way of defining, and we have tons of debates in the forum, in Claire's shop, in Mick's shop, of how we all bring it together. In FHIR, you know, you declare what you want, and there's the way to declare it is very harmonized, but not actually what you declare. So emergency room visit. So you need to create classes and types, not just one concept like we do. And so, you know, it looks like there is something similar. But then you have different vocabularies, terminologies you can use. It's not defined. There's no such thing as a standard concept. Similar for inpatient visit looks kind of good, but outpatient visit, ambulatory in their world, is already different. There's already possible loss of information. Is it important loss? Is it not? So essentially, it's a patient encounter procedure or patient evaluation and management procedure. Decision somebody needs to make. Where is this going to live? Who's going to make this decision? Which one is right? Which one is wrong? In emergency as well, you have ambiguity suddenly. So an emergency and inpatient visit, remember we had this combo thing because claims can't distinguish them sometimes. That will freak out the FHIR world. And you have a choice to make. And obviously we don't have a possible way to make these choices. So short, I'm only showing this to you just to give an impression of the journey that we went through as we started diving in and people started working with each other and started trying to talk the same language about things. The subgroups, they did a little better. So there's a data harmonization subgroup. They're the ones who created, the first thing they did is to say, all right, what have people done? Then they said, let's track those. Then let's create some action and create an action tracker and an issue tracker. So really what they did is they declared this is almost like a software development project, and let's get organized and put all the mechanisms in place to get organized. That's where they are. The terminology subgroups, very different people, very different language, very different world. Going in all sorts of directions, but as I already showed to you, there's of course the lossless data transformation, which is on the mind of the FHIR people. There is a priority of by which vocabulary you're gonna look at. Where do we start with? And it should be use case driven. And then the terminology group, of course, has to support the other ones. And then there is a Vulcan accelerator. This HL7. There's an organization in HL7. Vulcan is to support clinical research, and there is a FHIR to OMOP mapping program where we hope this can make now systematic and accelerated progress. Schatzi, ich kann jetzt nicht dazwischen reden. Oncology use case. There is M-code, which really is a FHIR standard. These people know pretty well what they're doing and have started to work on this. And the different avenues, EHR, tumor registries, and then these eMarks from the CDC. And the idea is that it should allow exchange of cancer data for large-scale observational study. So it's a FHIR to OMOP really job. And then they worked out how they're going to do it and what are the different, what kind of artifacts they need. Digital quality measurement, final one. It's a very strong use case because what people want to do is they want to use FHIR data and apply the precision of the OMOP core definition and phenotyping, and to be able to create quality metrics. And there's a synchronous, like as it happens, and an asynchronous, reporting to some authority approach, and not going into that. And there's a connectathon at the July Digital Quality Summit, where things should be, and they've actually put a program in place as well, where such a FHIR to OMOP connection is going to be built and tested against the CQL, which is data quality way of defining quality metrics, essentially their way to define cohorts, but they of course don't call it cohorts. Overall, this is active, so please come. It's harder than I thought. Maybe other people didn't think that, but I thought, well, that should be fairly straightforward. Same kind of people. We should be able to to bridge these gaps easily. And now we had to take a few rounds. And there are 4 subgroups. They're active. Please come and help us. Thanks.
Right. Sounds good. Thank you. So that's all the 3 different working group update we have for today. And of course, as Sung has sent in the chat, feel free to sign up for either one of the working groups through the Google, I think it's Teams form, through the Teams form, and you will be notified after you sign them up. All right, so that's all we have for this week's APAC community call. And next week we will have Europe chapter leaders to come in and share their experience of having the new how to setting up the new chapters and the building of the community in their part of the world. All right, so that's all we have for today. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.